The rest of our day here is going to be devoted to high strangeness. And for those of you that have never been to a conference like this, hold on to your seats because you're about to hear some very interesting stuff as we leave the nuts and bolts and get into, well, high strangeness. Sue Swiatek is the wife of Rob Swiatek, but she's also the state director of Virginia MUFON. She's spoken before. She's been around the field for a long, long time. And last year, give or take, she spoke to me about what she felt like was a really fascinating case that really sort of struck her fancy. And she said, I really got to talk about this case. And I called her up. I said, well, here we go. So let's hear about this case, Gateway to High Strangeness, right? Or something like that.
Very good.
Very good.
Gate City. Okay.
Swiatek.
Here we go. If I can figure this thing out. All right, I'll stand a little over here because I am going to have to end up reading quite a bit, sadly, but that's just the way it is. I'm Sue Swiatek. I have assistant state director now. Oh, that would be good. I can't hold everything. Okay.
You want me to hold it?
All right. No, that's fine. Yes, I got the concept now. Grab the microphone. Okay. I'm Sue Swiatek, and I have been around the bend a long time, around the bend. And Rob and I met in the UFO field in Chicago, of all things. We both went to a MUFON symposium, and that's when I first met him. I should have met him in 1987 because he was busy with the Fund for UFO Research, which was headquartered around Washington, D.C., and I did go to the symposium that MUFON had that basically the Fund for UFO Research put together or did a lot of work on coordinating, and that was held at American University in DC. So I went there on Sunday of the two-day conference. It was my first taste of anything ufological. I mean, people have to understand, those of you that are under 35, there was a world before the internet, and it was very difficult to hook up with fringe groups, if you want to call it a fringe group. And I just happened to turn on Nightline, and Ted Koppel was on there in 1987 talking about this UFO conference held in Washington that next weekend. And I was like, what? And Stan Friedman was holding forth, and they had a skeptic, of course, but Ted Koppel was treating it pretty fairly. Anyway, so that's how I met some members of the Fund for UFO Research. Ironically, Rob himself was running around fighting fires at the conference. I never met him that day. But I believe I met Phil Reynolds, who was also sitting at the, and there he is. His name will come up again, but he just raised his hand. He was sitting at the table for the Fund for UFO Research, and I kind of bebopped up and, what's going on, But I ended up having a conversation with Stan Friedman, and he was very accessible, and it was just a wonderful, eye-opening experience. But typically, I just got out of college. I was just sort of kicking around, and I wasn't able, because before the internet, you weren't able to really stay hooked up with things. I didn't even really catch where you would mail your snail mail check to get the MUFON journal or what the heck was going on. But it did try to go to some symposia over the next few years. Eventually, I actually signed the dotted line, became a member, got the journal, things moved from there. But it is interesting in the world we live now. I mean, you can find any kind of weird subculture you want. I mean, subcultures of subcultures, and it's a different world. So anyway, so in '99, believe it or not, I ran the MUFON Symposium. It's hard to believe. I feel like it's a different person. But we had it in Crystal City, but it was considered the Washington conference. And we had over like 600, 700 people. It's not clear how many people we had because we were so exhausted that people just kept streaming in and we didn't care at that point. So, too exhausted. Anyway, so moving right along. I'm not going to read this boilerplate. A lot of you have seen this a million years, but upper left is a man that I worked under for when I had the symposium in 1999. And that is Walt Andrus. He kept the trains running on time for 30 years, but it was still a pretty small shop back then. Now we have Dave McDonald. The footprint of MUFON is much more meaningful than it was back in the day. And Dave McDonald, he works out of the Lunken Airport, which is in the Cincinnati Covington, Kentucky. They kind of come together. It's in that area. It's a small airport for general aviation, which means, smaller planes. He has an airline, a tower school, teaching people, how to direct planes. Also pilot school, a drone school, which is really taking off. And he just bought a maintenance school, aviation maintenance. So he pretty much is controlling that airport, but he still flies. His wife does not fly anymore since she got a cataract. She didn't feel like the surgery was that great, but he still flies, and he's still a man with a plan. And he has been to Washington at least 20 days talking to Congress. I think Congress is a little busy right now. 2 wars, and they can't get somebody in the House of Representatives. I don't know. So it's a little of a different atmosphere. But he did come to the D.C. quite a bit. The claim to fame of MUFON and organized ufology is we have this thing called the Case Management System, or CMS. You'll hear that term battered around, CMS, and that's what it stands for. This is how it looked a few years ago. Now it's kind of much more cluttered in the front, but this is what it used to look like. And this is where the John Q. Public can weigh in with their sighting. And then we will investigate. I'm probably like 80% of cases we'll investigate. There will be ones we don't investigate. They're just obvious IFOs. I mean, you may not get back to the witness in those cases. We have a lot of Starlink gazers. A lot of people thinking they're seeing something wild. But we do try to talk to almost everybody except for the real obvious identifieds. And this is a book about the 50 years of MUFON, which pretty much parallels a lot of events in ufology in general, because MUFON is kind of like the gold standard. And this is a book project that a previous man who was involved in MUFON quite a bit with the website and other things, he started the format, which was a really great idea. He wasn't able to really see it all the way through, and he left MUFON. Rob picked up on it. You can see he's listed as one of the editors. I wrote quite a bit, and I illustrated quite a bit. We had a copy or 2 in the back, but they're already sold. But that was my reason for dropping the slide in. But you can go to Amazon, search 50 years. Don't use the word anniversary. You'll be taken into weird places. But MUFON, 50 years, and it's a wonderful picture book. Lots of illustrations, lots of fun. I like to always throw these slides up just to indicate we have 500 to 600 field investigators and researchers, but yet we have 6,500 members in MUFON, something like that. And then, we have 8 billion humans on Earth, so we need more interested people. I mean, where are the people? They're not in here. Anyway, but the UFO Research Coalition, we don't exist in a vacuum. None of these groups do. This was just done alphabetically at the time, and this is one of the manuscripts we put together for a book. And CUFOS, Center for UFO Studies, Dr. Mark Rodiger, Rob's talking to him probably about once a week. And the Fund for UFO Research, which is very small. The address is our house. Rob's controlling that now. And then, of course, MUFON, as I discussed previously, in Cincinnati area. Here's the ad for Mysteries of Space and Sky, or part of the Eventbrite site. Here's some publications that we've done over the years, which I won't drag us into. Okay, we're in the age of disclosure, the action of disclosing or opening up to view, revelation, discovery, exposure. That's the time frame we're in. We hope we just don't get the short end of the stick again with the football that gets taken away from us. Anyway, this is a little cartoon that I drew. Punxsutawney Phil gets out of his tunnel around February 2nd, trying to see what's going on. He sees this shadow, but guess what it is? It's the shadow of the Chinese balloon. Anyway, you had to be there, man. Okay. This is just a couple slides of things going on. We have all these different elements trying to report. We have AARO, which has most of the government involved. Congress is pushing back. And then here we have NASA doing their thing, which I thought was pretty limp, actually. They had that press conference, or they called it a briefing, and then they had their very thin follow-up to that with their document. And now we have a new document that Rob discussed. But this is some highfalutin restaurant in D.C., and the board is here assembled. You can see Rob on the right-hand side. I'm not going to identify everyone. On the left, the guy in the front is not on the board. However, he is part of a vintner family. of winery people loaded with money. They came from Switzerland and they set up shop in Virginia. They have paid for a lobbyist to get MUFON noticed. And talk about weird. I mean, that was a gift to us for this purpose. And we have this, they're called A10, that's the name of the lobbying group. And darn if it didn't work. It's amazing. MUFON has been talking to Congress quite a bit. So I got to go to one event, just a dinner. I think one congressperson was just leaving when I showed up. We were just having a meal. But Rob took a little more of a active role, of course, being part of the board. This is kind of funny, but it's they didn't get arrested, but they were they were welcome to pose, get a photo shot. This is Dave McDonald and his wife. Here they are. This is kind of tedious. I'll do it real quick because there's not much. I have one case that I'm doing today in depth. So I'll just play this video if it will play. Dave McDonald and his wife.
All right, here we go.
Here we go. There's Kevin. He's married to somebody on the board who's not here. She went to the restroom. John Schuessler's daughter with the blonde hair. There's Rob. Debbie Ziegelmeyer in the back. And then the Vintner guy. So, ironically, his father, he's the big man, and he had, the money. But he was not allowed to go to these congressional meetings because he kept his Swiss citizenship. So that's a sad story there. And he started doing the paperwork to become a U.S. citizen, and he pulled it back at the last minute, so he didn't get to be part of this, even though he paid for it. But anyway, moving right along. Another thing that is happening in Virginia that I'm really happy to see is finally acknowledged more than it had been, is Wytheville, Virginia. Way down in the toe of Virginia is Wytheville, and they finally are having a UFO festival every year. I've been to 2 of them, and they're in June. I don't have the exact date, and it's commemorating a Wytheville flap. This is probably one of the biggest flaps in really all the United States. And when we talk about a UFO flap, we're talking about a relatively small geographic area that has a lot of activity in a prescribed period of time. I know it's getting very technical about UFOs, but it could be 2 weeks, it could be 2 or maybe even 6 months, but that would still be considered a flap, especially if it's geologically kind of fixated, which it was. And it was very unusual. They finally had a 35th anniversary, and the way that came to be is a young lady at a radio station in the area, I think it was Roanoke, called me up and said, I want to interview you for this 35th anniversary of Wytheville. And I'm like, wow, I'm so glad somebody's doing something with Wytheville. So you know how it is with radio stations. They do Zoom interviews, and then she walked around the town of Wytheville and put together a video, which of course they post to their site, even though it's a radio program. But so her work really impressed people. And because she did that, in advance of the 35th anniversary, this guy stepped into the lurch and said, hey, let's have a festival, let's have a thing. So I found out about it like 10 days before it occurred, and I ran down there. I told my Virginia MUFON people about it, and some people went down there crazily. It's an easy drive, but it's a bit of a long drive. And we had a blast. They do tremendous artwork there, and this is the kind of the logo from this year, which they had shirts that were glowing in the dark. I have one for someone. Rhiannon, are you here? I don't know. I don't know if she's here. I keep carrying the shirt around, and then she shows up when I don't have the shirt. I have the shirt. She doesn't show up. I think it's just destiny. But because of this conference, and because a lot of people saw that on the radio station's website, a lot of energy got started. And the 2 guys that wrote the original book that had an orange cover, we have the original at home, they decided to reissue their book. And it was so bizarre because they have a section in the back, a news section, and they even wrote about me. I mean, they didn't even tell me. I mean, I don't even know what's going on. They misspelled my name, but believe me, I'm in there. And I said, well, it's about time. 35 years is enough. We need to really celebrate this. And so darned if, out of my words, it actually came into being with this 35th anniversary of Wytheville. So the weird thing about Wytheville, I don't have a lot of slides with Withville because I got to move on to the one big case that I was going to talk about. I'm just going to talk about one case. But Withville, there was very strange things seen in the sky. One of them was a T-ship. It was a very thick letter T, and it was going point forward with the wide part at the back with the lights. A lot of people saw that. They saw just these rectangles that were like huge refrigerators flying around. It makes no sense. Nothing was aerodynamic. It wasn't even conventional UFO stuff. That's one thing about Withville that was very odd, is the odd connection with these really strange geometric forms that were flying around. And there were some odd people in town. It had some elements of Mothman where there were some oddball people in town asking questions and kind of stirring the pot. And we never really got closure on what that was all about. But these two gentlemen, Danny Gordon and Paul Dellinger, were there, and they spoke at the conference. And I don't know how much longer they're going to be going on. Danny keeps saying, "This is my last appearance," and he keeps going on. So I have those books signed by both gentlemen, and if they both make it another year, more power to them. But I do have signed copies if you're interested. Okay, now moving on to this case. Gate City, Gateway to High Strangeness. That's the title I gave it. This is a case, you're probably wondering, why am I featuring it now? And I wonder that too. But basically, in 2012, two young, I'm going to call them boys. Everybody get over it, because they were 16. And I don't want to say youths or young men. It just gets to be too much. Two boys, around 16 years old. They lived in this city called Gate City, Virginia. And they were spending the weekend together, or at least staying overnight with each other. They're straight, just throw that in. And they were just knocking around one of their houses. And the guys had been in touch with these girls from some sort of chat room. And the girls were saying, we're going to that away game in your town, and we'll just be around, or like 10-ish, or something like that. Why don't you meet us and just have a chat with us? So the typical teenage boy, he's up for that. So they said they'll go out. And I'm going to play a video. I think he mentions the swinging bridge. There's a thing called the swinging bridge in Gate City, and it's just an old footbridge that's suspended and it swings. But there's no real significance to that. These girls pulled over at some sort of clover leaf or something, or an exit, and they were under the overpass. Just to talk to the boys. So the boys are walking up there about a mile away, and they chat the girls up. One guy got some phone numbers, or a phone number. But that was about it. It was just a real quickie. We better get back because my mom's going to worry, So that was the extent of their interaction with the girls. On their way back, this is a small town. It's not illuminated except for the houses along this one street, which I'll show you the aerial view soon. As they were coming back, they suddenly realized that their path was actually going to intersect with something bizarre, like 4 blue-green glowing humanoid aliens. And they were very trim and somewhat angular, but I don't know if they really look like praying mantises. I haven't gotten that far with the description, though I have spoken to one of the witnesses. I finally got to meet him at the Withville Festival this last June. So I got some, well, not this last June, the previous June, 2022, the first time I was at Withville. I tried to get in touch with them because they're from that general area. I say general, but they're like an hour and a half away, still further out in the toe of Virginia, barely on Virginia soil. And one of them came out and met me, and so I was able to get a quick video of him during some of this. So anyway, I'm moving right along here. This was the report. Both of the boys experienced this in 2012, but they didn't report it till 2014. But here I am kind of slow on the pickup. When I saw that they were teenagers, we were not allowed to talk to teenagers. So I don't know if they were both 18. One might have been 17 when they finally reported it. I'm not certain. But I got it in my head that they were underage, and at that time with MUFON, it was verboten. You can't talk to children. But I did call one up anyway and just tried to tell him that this sounds like a really good, amazing sighting. We'd like to hear more, but are your parents in on it? Did you tell your parents? Oh no, we can't tell my parents. Don't tell my parents. I tried to tell them. They couldn't handle it. I don't want to tell my parents. Don't make me tell my parents. And I said, no one's making you do anything. So they were so skittish that I really just got the basic information. And I didn't know how to proceed with the case because we're not supposed to talk to underage people, which I thought they were, and I think one of them was. Anyway, time went by, and then we had someone, it's a long story, but this guy in Florida, he kind of left MUFON under a cloud, but he got very aggressive about his helping duty. So if a case was sitting there too long, he would jump in there and diddle around with it and move on to the next one, real hit or miss. So he actually put the label of hoax on both of these reports because he felt like it was a hoax. Nothing could be farther from the truth. They both said, no, that guy never called me, whatever. So this was all we got to begin with. Tyler said, me and my friend were walking back towards his house on a foggy night, and we were on the road, and we both stopped and looked over in the field and spotted these 4 lanky, tall, green-blue creatures which made clicking sounds and then took off across the creek and up the hill into the woods. Logan wrote, my friends and I have witnessed pale blue humanoids in a very close proximity to our bodies. Total time was 40 to 50 seconds. We need to talk to someone in private about this, please, MUFON. We feel the urgency to voice our stories. Anyway, when I called them, only one would talk to me, the other wouldn't. He basically said, well, you're talking to my friend, that'll be good enough. So I've never really spoken, I think I've spoken to both boys now, but it's a little bit foggy because that was 2014. I'm trying to figure out who was who. This is the general area. I know you can't see it too well, but this road here, I don't know if I can get this thing to work. I'll try. I might just kind of, I'm not sure what's going on with this thing. Rob had better luck with it. Oh well. Rob, are you still here? What, could you try to make this work? Well, he's coming up. Let me just say, this main line that you see in the middle of the screen, that is the road that one of the boys lived on, and that was it was called. There it is. Okay.
Just keep
Okay. Yeah, I was trying that. It wasn't awake at first. Yeah, I think that's the thing.
It's now awake.
It's now awake. But this is where they lived along this road here. One of them did. And this is like a sports complex up here. That sports complex wasn't as well defined back when they had the sighting. I think some of these things were left to seed and then they were revitalized in the intervening years. But basically, they were at the top of the screen and a little further up, meeting these girls under an underpass. And then they were walking back, generally heading back towards, oops, that was not good. Okay, they were heading back towards one of the houses. But when they ran into those beings, they were very, very close, very close. They were like 15 feet away, maybe even 10 feet away, they said. Because they were walking, hey, not really paying attention. And these aliens were really booking pretty fast. And they were like very confused to see each other. The beings were startled. They were startled. It was totally unbelievable. And one of the boys heard something in his head, a message. It was very hard to identify. Like dolphin speak, he said. It was very weird. Then they had this incredible sonic experience, a sound, a force, whatever, coming from the aliens. They definitely read it as a defense mechanism. And these two boys just grabbed each other. They thought they were going to die because it was agonizing, this sonic force that came out of the aliens as a he thinks, a defense mechanism. But they thought they were going to die. He said, we were going to die. I was convinced of it. But this excruciating sound finally ended. And then the beings, this thing also has a pointer function, but I don't think we'll ever be able to get it, as long as it does something. Ooh, that's not the right thing. Okay. All right, let's go here. Anyway, they were walking along here from generally that where there's now a sports complex, which was kind of gone to seed at the time. And then they were walking back. They encountered these beings. and they're totally scared out of their minds. And he said the beings started speeding up, and he said they went towards this little stream back here, which you can't really see, and they headed towards the stream, which is in a ravine, and the ravine went down and like way up, and it was so, he said, there's no way even on all fours I could scramble up that. It was so steep, you can't scramble up that thing, plus there's brambles and stuff, you can't do it. So, but the aliens just sped right up, their feet are moving, but they're moving much faster, and they just kind of floated up that little embankment, and next thing, they were gone. Well, these guys are scared out of their wits. They're running back to his friend's house to spend the night. They're pounding on every door they run into, hoping for help. They were scared to death. Nobody was home, or nobody would come to their door, one or the two. Probably nobody was home. So let me move on. But that brings us to this interesting situation. As you can see on the right side, you're like, is that a bunch of trees? What is that? That is a mountain that suddenly rises up, and it's kind of bizarre. And it just rises up right out. If you look at this on your own, Gate City, you can look around. This is a very unusual mountain. And here's the weird thing about that mountain. Phil Reynolds clued me in. Phil Reynolds went to school in Indiana. Okay, Indiana, look at a map. You know how far away that is? But they had a field trip to this mountain because it's that interesting. So I find that very interesting. This mountain is a tectonic plate activity, makes it just come rising up, just out of nowhere, seemingly. And it's very, very long. It runs down to Tennessee, 172 miles. And where this incident occurred, ironically, is one of the rare breaks in the mountain. The mountain kind of breaks there. And he went there with his geology class to learn about all the strata that was forced up with this tectonic plate action. And there's layers underneath that were softer material, and layers on the top that were softer that got eroded away, so the rock is very visible. So it's worth taking students to check it out. And then also underneath, there's a lot of springs and under waterways, carving out little caverns, and it's if those people that are interested in weird energy patterns, it's definitely worth looking at. Another thing about the area with this geology, and you can talk to Phil in detail about it if you want, because I can't do justice to it. This is the Clinch Mountain geology commentary that he put together. It may have relevance to UFO, psychic, metaphysical, and cultural activity in the area. And this is the Tennessee-Virginia Basin, talking about the geological literature as a textbook example of anticlinal mountain, a geologic structure formed when rock strata are folded upwards during mountain building, like I was saying. So this is basically what's going on here at Clinch Mountain. Another interesting thing is the presence of a lot of quartz crystals. Quartz and quartzite are both present there. And I bring this up, and this is a little bit of speaking out of turn here. Hopefully lightning won't strike me. But years ago, we worked a lot with abductees. And we worked with Bud Hopkins and Dave Jacobs a lot, both who have spoken at Mysteries of Space and Sky over the years. And they worked completely with abductees and the insights the abductees had to say. And one of the things, we had closed-door sessions trying to help abductees. And we had Bud Hopkins and Dave Jacobs both there at the same time. And one thing was, when somebody started talking about quartz crystals or giant crystals on board the UFO, they would always shut them up and say, well, that's kind of a secret that we don't talk about in public. So I'm kind of breaking the rules. But let me tell you, aliens are interested in mining. They're very interested in our crystals, especially quartz crystals. I worked with another abductee that the aliens told him to go behind his house in this interesting little creek and pull up all the quartz crystals you can find. And they made him do it. And he was doing this all the time as a kid. Finally, one day, he couldn't take the pressure anymore, and his schoolwork was suffering. And he had a diary of all this stuff because they made him write a diary. And he just burnt it one day in a fire and said, leave me alone. I can't concentrate. I can't do anything. He was very almost suicidal. Luckily, he went on to marry and have a child, but then the child started saying some things about aliens, and that's when he called us. He said, I went through hell in a handbasket myself. I don't want my son to go through that. So we at least were a shoulder to cry on, and he did get hooked up with a support group. But the point is, it goes back to the crystals, the quartz crystals especially. So it's very interesting. Apparently they powered their ship with something to do with crystals. Anyway, throw that into the mix. So this is one of the witnesses, and he has a video which no longer embeds in doesn't embed in my PowerPoint. But I have it separately, and we'll see if it will run. It's only 3 minutes long, and then I just have one picture that I did with the help of AI. Even Rob's picture, I'm starting to experiment with artificial intelligence art things. I was an art major. But to make it quicker, a nice rendered thing, maybe you can spend 2 hours with the AI and get it done. It might take you 10 hours to render that yourself. Maybe when I get quicker, it'll be a little faster. The slide I'm going to show you is, I think I did that in like 45 minutes. So because it's very tricky when you write the script of what you want. Be careful what you wish for, because it will turn it inside out and give you something hilarious. But so if you want to experiment with it, it's free now. You might as well use it while you still can, while it's free. Okay, I'm trying to find my cursor. I can't find my cursor. You saw it?
Upper right. It was. There it is, upper right.
I do not see it on here at all.
Don't move. There it is. There it is. It's right there. Upper right hand corner. Just right of the.
You know what? Let me see if this works. I'm going to try to escape out of here. Just yeah. Okay, this is better. Now I can see it because I escaped out. I'm going to play the video. I hope you can hear it. If not, I'll just have to let that go. But it's worth hearing. One of the young men.
And me and my friend Tyler, we were meeting these 2 girls at the swinging bridge next to my house. And then we spoke with them for like 15 minutes, and then they were headed to Rogersville, Tennessee. And we stopped at the swinging bridge on the way back to my house. And then we stayed there for about 5 minutes. We were just observing nature. We were just enjoying ourselves. And then we proceeded to head back to my house on the same road that we met the girls at. And then we were just talking about probably curriculum or school or video games or something at the time. And we proceeded to have 4 beings from our right side approach us as we were headed home. And they were startled just as much as we were when I was able to shine my iPhone light on them. And me and him grabbed at each other. And then we heard a telepathic message that was probably mixed between, to my best bet, it was Mandarin and dolphin chatter or some type of guttural hum. It sounded very electronic. It was very cryptic. It lasted for about 30 seconds, and then they jolted across the field as they were phase running. That's one of the terms that I could best identify what they were doing as they were running away from us. They were actually running as in a hive mind. They were phase running across the field at like 30 to 40 miles an hour from a dead stop, and it was miraculous. And then I was able to run to a neighbor's, knock on her door to see if she would let us in really quick because we were absolutely terrified. And she wouldn't answer the door, so we had to run from her porch to the next person's porch to the next person's porch, and then we got back to my house. And then I proceeded to ask my dad, I was like, hey, I've spotted some deer in the field. I want to see if it's a buck or something, or let's see how many there is. And he handed me the spotlight, and we go back outside. And then Tyler grabs a shovel or a pitchfork. I was like, Tyler, if they wanted to hurt us, they would have already done it. And then he laid it down, and we were shining the light, and we didn't see any trace of them afterwards. And it was pretty remarkable. And then I proceeded to search the creek bank the next morning, and no residual information, nothing. There's no footprints. There's nothing. They're completely gone. But the total event lasted for about the transmission probably about 30 seconds, but the total event probably about 2 minutes. Like the whole event, like running to my neighbor's porch and then to my house. And
how far away were these creatures from?
15 to 20 feet, and they were 5 to 7 feet tall. There was 3 taller ones, 1 shorter one. The taller ones were behind the shorter one, and I feel like they were like escorting the shorter one. I feel like they were on a scout mission. I don't know what they were doing on the land, but it's Indian land, and they were running away from us once we spotted them. They were like, oh, they saw us, we saw them. They stopped for a moment, and then they literally couldn't, they just wouldn't, like, they stood straight up. They didn't have any, like, body language. It was almost like a hive mind. It was, and we were just completely terrified. And we grabbed each other. I was like, Tyler, if they're gonna take me, they're gonna take you, because we just grabbed on. It was quite terrifying. But that's pretty much the gist of it, yeah.
That's me. I had another video of him when he really goes into the so-called transmission, because they did feel, they heard words and they heard emotion, but they were also traumatized because this barrage nearly killed them. I mean, they just felt like their ears were popping. It was horrible, and he didn't go into it on this one. That's why I had him do another video just talking about that particular aspect of things. But I'll just show you the slide. Once again, remember, I used AI to help me, and now I see that detail. One's a different size than the other, so I'll actually tweak it to reflect that. But between Photoshop and AI, let me just show you what I came up with. And this is my last slide. There it is. So it was interesting playing with AI. If anybody wants to play with it, I've done 3 different apps, and I'll tell you what I think is the best one, at least at this point. But yeah, this was very traumatizing to them, and you know, they waited 2 years to report it, and they were very, very afraid at the time, and couldn't tell their parents. And they said, "Oh, it's kind of Bible Belt here." My parents wouldn't understand. So anyway, I think I better wrap up here. I think I'm a little late. So I guess we started a little late, Rob and I did. But thanks for your attention. And let me tell you, high strangeness is everywhere. It's definitely happening.
Sue, one question that I know half the people in here are thinking. These 4
Okay, sorry.
individuals here, these creatures, is that something that was based on what the boy told you, or is that something that was created by AI? I mean, is that what they said? He said they look like?
This was a combination of me using AI as a tool and then Photoshop. And this is what I came up with. I think they're a little bit too anthropomorphized with the, you know, and he said they were lanky, but I don't know if these are lanky enough. I mean, the ones on the left look lankier than the ones on the right. But that's where I need to go back and refine it and see.
But you didn't show that picture to that boy.
I have not.
And he didn't say, yes, that's what they look like.
Yeah, I
know
will
that's
do
what
that.
They didn't look
But
like.
I asked him a lot of questions because he really didn't go all the way to praying mantis insectoid when I talked to him. He kind of like it was between the insectoid look and an alien look. But I do need to go back to him. But I think I captured this synchronized kind of way, and the fact that they really weren't communicating in a normal way. They were just kind of stoic. But I will go back to him and
I think that's
but I'm a little bit afraid, but I will do it because
we'll have one of your people.
he's very, you know, 1 minute he wants to talk, the next minute he won't. I contacted him by phone and email this time around, and he did not talk to me. A third party I've never met called me and said, "Oh, I heard you called so-and-so. He wants to meet you. I think I can get him to show up." But it's like, why can't he just, you know, talk? It's really weird. So this is like years and years of him, 10 years of him not wanting to talk directly to me, but yet suddenly wanting to meet me. I don't know if, you know, I'll see, but it might be too threatening for him to look at it. But I will try. I will try.
Okay, I think that scientifically that would probably be the thing to do.